Dear distinguished guests and participants, we are back. Hope you had a chance to network with each other and enjoyed your coffee. ASAPES provides undergraduate and graduate degree programs in sport management and communication in Azerbaijani, English, and Russian languages. Programs mainly focus on application of theory, principles, and practices of business to the sport industry. The next presentation is called The Changing World of Sports Coverage, both from a media and a player's perspective, delivered by Colin Raymond Gibson, who is a faculty member in Sport Journalism Master's Program at ASAPES, company director and founder at High Park Communications, co-founder at Dreamfields and Communications Expert, and the director of communications at Baku 2015 European Games Operation Committee. The floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a great moment to be here today, and I'm really grateful to you all for inviting us to be a part of this historic conference which marks the centenary of the birth of Heydər Əliyev, who created this.
Değerli dostlar, əziz izləyicilər, ASAPES'in YouTube kanalında canlı yayımımız davam etməkdədir və qısa müddətli fasilədən sonra isə bizim artıq ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfransın davamı, ilk gün üzrə davamı gerçəkləşməkdədir və mən bir daha yenicə qoşulanlar üçün bu elmi konfrans barədə bilgi əldə etmək istəyənlər üçün məlumat xarakterli bir informasiyanı diqqətinizə çatdırım ki, Ümummilli lider Heydər Əliyevin 100 illiyinə həsr olunan idman elmlərinin inkişafında müasir tendensiyalar mövzusunda ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfrans keçirilir və konfrans 2 gün əhatə edəcək. Hazırda konfransın ilk günündəyik və burada konfransın ilk günü üzrə müxtəlif rəsmi açılış nitqlərindən sonra artıq təqdimatlara və məruzələrə geniş yer verilib və məruzələrdə biz fasiləyə dönəmində bir neçə məruzəni artıq qeyd etmiş olduq və bu məruzələr bədən tərbiyəsi və idman sahəsində tanınmış mütəxəssislər, kifayət qədər dünya təcrübəsində yeri olan mütəxəssislərin məruzələri ilə yadda qaldı. İndi fasilədən sonra isə daha bir neçə məruzələr var. İndi hazırda sizin də gördüyünüz kimi həm böyük bir təqdimatı gerçəkləşir. Bu Colin Raymond Gibson'ın məruzəsidir və təqdimatı da var. Burada əsas mövzu dəyişən idman dünyası, həm media, həm də oyuncu nəzərindən mövzusudur. Və indi azda təqdimatda biznes məlumatlığı diqqətə çatdırılır. Həmin bu dəyişən idman dünyasının və təbii ki, əgər burada dəyişən idman dünyası və media istiqaməti varsa, bunun biznes məlumatlığı da var. Burada artıq biri hazırda Gibson'ın həm dünya kuboku, dünya çempionatları, olimpiyadalarla bağlı bilgiləri diqqətə çatdırılır. İndi biz monitorda da təqdimatda da Sidney 2000-ci ilin təqdimatı edilir və həmin 2000-ci ilin Sidney olimpiyadasının baxış, həmin olimpiyadaya baxış. Yəqin ki, Gibson'ın əsas burada təqdimatı illər öncəki idman dünyası ilə indiki real durumu fərqləndirmək və analiz etməkdir və dəyişən idman dünyasının fərqliliyini göstərməkdir və bu sırada artıq ilkin təqdimat elə Sidney 2000-ci ildə olimpiyadasında da vurğulanır. Hətta Gibson tərəfindən deyildi ki, burada olimpiyadada bizim Azərbaycan idmançılarının da çıxışı var idi və 2000-ci il olimpiyadasına bir geri baxış var. Sidney olimpiyadasına təqdimatdan da biz indi ətraflı məlumatı bir daha da sizin diqqətinizə çatdıracağım. Və dəyərli izləyicilərimiz, bizim bugünkü elmi konfransımızı ASAPES YouTube kanalımız vasitəsilə rəsmi, ASAPS-in rəsmi YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə izləyə bilərsiniz. Həmçinin bu elmi konfrans barədə geniş məlumatı ASAPS-in rəsmi sosial media səhifələrindən də məlumat ala. Həmçinin həmin səhifələrdəki keçid link vasitəsilə birbaşa canlı yayıma da keçmə imkanınız var. Şərhdə isə mənəm Rüfət Nadirli və bugünkü beynəlxalq elmi konfransın sonuna qədər canlı yayımımızı biz davam etdirəcəyik. Burada konfransda müxtəlif idman təşkilatlarının nümayəndələri də iştirak edir. Bizim rəsmi çıxışda da biz bir neçə rəsmi şəxsləri də gördük. ASAPS-in rektoru Fuad Hacıyevlə yanaşı Gənclər və İdman Nazirinin müavini Fərhad Hacıyevin və Milli Məclisin üzvü Ülvi Quliyevinə çıxışlarına biz diqqət çəkdik və orada hər üç çıxışda bu elmi konfransın ənənəvi hal almasının əhəmiyyəti vurğulandı və ikinci dəfə keçirilən bu beynəlxalq konfransa böyük marağın da və diqqətin olması, həmçinin müxtəlif beynəlxalq mütəxəssislərin və kifayət qədər idman çapında mövqeyi və rolu olan şəxslərin bugünkü konfransa yer alması bir daha bu konfransın əhəmiyyətliliyinin və ənənəvi hala keçməsinin təsdiqini etmiş oldular və bu rəsmi çıxışlarda da bir daha diqqətə çatdırıldı. Bundan əlavə çıxışlar zamanı Azərbaycanın dünyada idman ölkəsi kimi tanındığını və illər ərzində artıq bizim peşəkar çoxlu idmançılarımızın, tanınan idmançılarımızın dünya və Avropa miqyasında keçirilən, istər Avropa və dünya çempionatlarında keçirilən yarışlarda fərqlənməsi, böyük nailiyyətlər qazanması, olimpiadalarda yer tutması artıq dünyada belə bir təəssüratın da yaranması və təsdiqi kimi də qiymətləndirilə bilər ki, artıq Azərbaycan idman ölkəsidir və bu yöndə də uğurlu nəticələrimizi davam etdiririk. Təbii ki, ölkəmizdə bütün sahələrdə olduğu kimi idman sahəsində də dövlətimiz tərəfindən böyük diqqət və qayğı var. Bugün hər bir idmançımız o qayğını hiss edir. Bugün hər bir məşqçimiz, hər bir idman mütəxəssisimiz bu diqqət və qayğını hiss edir və yer gəlmişkən ölkəmizdə idmançılar üçün, gənc nəsil üçün, peşəkar formada idmanla məşğul olmaq istəyənlər üçün ümumiyyətlə sağlam həyat tərzi, sağlam bir idman ab-havasında özünü əks etdirən hər bir cəmiyyətimizin hər bir üzvü üçün müxtəlif şəhər və rayonlarımızda, ümumilikdə ölkə üzrə hər bir şərait yaradılıb, müxtəlif idman komplekslərimizin olması, müxtəlif idman cəmiyyətləri fonunda idman zallarının, müxtəlif idman növləri üzrə zal və cəmiyyətlərin mövcudluğu və təbii ki, bu cəmiyyətlərin getdikcə çoxluğu, idman klublarının getdikcə çoxluğu və buradakı üzvlərin sayının günü-gündən artması ona dəlalət edir ki, artıq idman ölkəsi kimi tanınan Azərbaycanımızda idmana maraq, sağlam ruhda böyümək amili özünü böyük ölçüdə ehtiva edir. Bu çox yaxşı haldır və belə bir elmi konfranslar həmçinin hər birimizi, cəmiyyətimizin hər bir üzvünü idmana sövq edir, hər bir üzvünü sağlam olmağa sövq edir və belə bir elmi konfranslar geniş şaxəli cəmiyyətimizin hər bir fərdi üçün də çox əhəmiyyətlidir. Və bugünkü konfransımızın da əsas məqsədi də həm də idman elmlərində müasir nəzəriyyələri, yeni tendensiyaları müzakirə etmək, idmanla bağlı müxtəlif sahələrin təmsilçiləri arasında fənlər arası fikir mübadiləsi aparmaqdır. Konfransın ilk günündə idman psixologiyası, idman tibbi, idman menecmenti və idman hüququ kimi istiqamətləri üzrə aktual mövzularda məruzələr də var. İndi biz geri gəlmişən növbəti məruzəni də dinləmiş oluruq və konfransın növbəti günü isə 1 dekabr tarixini əhatə edəcək və 1 dekabr tarixində isə idman elminin müxtəlif sahələrini əhatə edən praktiki təqdimatlar və müzakirələr də olacaq, müxtəlif sessiyalar reallaşır. Bilirsiniz ki, mən bayaq da fasilədən öncə də məlumat verdim ki, sabahki ASAPS-də keçiriləcək müzakirələrdə 5 sessiya üzrə çıxışlar olacaq, müzakirələr olacaq. Bugün isə sırf ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfransın məhz bugünkü günündə isə ən əsas diqqət müxtəlif təqdimatlar və müzakirələrə, məruzələrə daha doğrusu həsr olunub. Canlı yayımımız davam edir. Dostlar, ASAPS-in YouTube kanalı, rəsmi YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə bizə qoşulmaq imkanınız da var və isti-isti son məlumatları, bizim beynəlxalq elmi konferansdakı son durumu bilmək üçün bizim canlı yayımıza YouTube platformasına da qoşula bilərsiniz. Hazır ki, ilk günümüzdə beynəlxalq elmi konfransda artıq bir neçə məruzə yekunlaşıb. Mən bu sırada Michael Polluzmorun məruzəsini qeyd edə bilərdim. Hansı ki, kişi və qadın idmançılar arasında fərq varmı mövzusunda geniş təqdimatı ilə çıxış etdi. Ardınca isə Paulina Maria Klasovskanın təqdimatı məruzəsi oldu. Və bu da çox böyük maraqla qarşılandı. Söhbət Paulina Maria Klasovskanın məruzəsindən gedir. Qadın idmançılarda omba və qasıq sümükləri, qadın idmançılarda ombanın anatomik, fizioloji və biomexaniki xüsusiyyətləri və klinik təsirləri mövzusu idi. Və ardınca isə daha bir çıxış Amanda Jane Pinkney tərəfindən reallaşdı. Bu isə psixologiya, idman məşqçiliyi, elmi və incəsənət arasındakı dilemmada harda dayanır mövzusu yer almışdı. Sesiyanın yekunu olaraq isə fasiləyə qədər isə Azərbaycan Milli Antidoping Agentliyinin icraçı direktoru Təminat Ağzadənin də çıxışını biz izləmə imkanımız oldu. Və hazırda isə Colin Raymond Gibson'ın dəyişən idman dünyası həm media, həm də oyuncu nəzərindən məruzəsi davam edir. Mən də burada təqdimata özüm də baxıram. Gibson'ın dəyişən idman mediasındakı fərqliliyi diqqətə çatdırdı. Hətta özünüz də monitorlar vasitəsində görürsünüz ki, Sidney 2000-dən başlayan dəyişən idman dünyasındakı fərqliliyi əsas diqqətə çatdırdı və hazırda idmanda, əlhətta futbol nöqteyi nəzərdən dünya çempionatlarında edilən son yeniliklər, yeni texnologiyalar sayəsində, misal üçün VAR sisteminin tətbiqini burada biz monitor vasitəsilə görə bilirik və həmçinin yeni texnologiyalarda müxtəlif idman növləri üzrə qaçış zolaqlarındakı o fərqi, yeni texnologiyaların bunların ən son modellərinin müəyyənləşdirilməsi tempini biz rahat bir şəkildə görə bilirik. İndi hazırda yeni texnologiyanın futbolda nəzəri və praktiki yolları haqqında da bilgilər var. New technology in football, futbolda yeni texnologiyalar. Hazırda Gibson da dediği kimi offside amilini indi bizə izah edir. VAR sistemində buna yanaşmanı bizə izah edir və texnologiyanın tətbiqi sayəsində atılan addımları FIFA tərəfindən görülən, FIFA və UEFA tərəfindən görülən işləri bizə diqqətimizə çatdırır və futbolda yeni texnologiyaların birinin offside nöqteyi nəzərinin son hədd olaraq ən son texnologiyalardan istifadə sayəsində bunun müəyyənləşdirməsi və aydınlaşdırılmasını izahını verir. Əslində texnologiyalar, yeni texnoloji yanaşmalar çoxdur. Dünyanı, belə deyək də, dəyişən idman dünyasında əslində təkcə futbolla deyil, müxtəlif idman növləri üzrə biz o texnolojini, yanaşmanı, dəyişikliyi biz rahat bir şəkildə görə bilirik. Və Gibson hazırda hələ təqdimatını offside mövzusu üzrə davam etdirir. Futbolda yeni texnologiya məruzəsi ilə. Məlumat verim ki, ümumilikdə Colin Raymond Gibson dünya idman mütəxəssisləri sırasında öz yeri və çəkisi olan bir şəxsdir və onun bugün həm Gibson və Gibson kimi tanınmış mütəxəssislərin bugün beynəlxalq elmi konfransa yer alması bu konfransın necə böyük bir əhəmiyyət kəsb etdiyinin bir daha bariz nümunəsidir. Colin Raymond Gibson həmçinin High Park Communications şirkətinin həm təsisçisi, həm də direktorudur. Dreamfields şirkətinin də yer gəlmişən həm təsisçisidir. Kommunikasiyalar üzrə mütəxəssisdir. Yaxın Şərq, Şimali, Afrika və Asiya regionları yeri gəlmişkən Bakı 2015 Avropa Oyunları Əməliyyat Komitəsinin kommunikasiyalar üzrə də direktorudur. Və əslində mən bir konfransdan da çıxışlar sırasında mən bir haşiyə çıxaraq sonradan mən indi sizi bu konfransla baş-başa buraxacağım. Konfransın girişində də təqdimatlar oldu ki, belə bir mütəxəssislərin ölkəmizə gəlişi, belə bir mütəxəssislərin əməkdaşlıq, həmçinin onların da Azərbaycanın dünya idmanında bir idman ölkəsi kimi tanınmasının bariz nümunəsidir. Gibson və bunun kimi mütəxəssislərin ölkəmizə gəlişi, əməkdaşlıq imkanları, öz təcrübələrini bölüşməsi və belə bir beynəlxalq elmi konfransda yer alması bizim illərdir ki, bu sahədəki uğurlarımızın da təməlində dayanır. Çünki açılış nitqlərində də eşitdiyimiz kimi Bakıda müxtəlif beynəlxalq idman yarışlarına Bakının, Azərbaycanın ev sahibliyi etməsi də bir göstəricidir. Bakı 2015-i biz qeyd edə bilərik. İslam həmrəyli oyunlarını biz qeyd edə bilərik. Formula 1 yarışlarının hazırda davam edən Formula 1 yarışlarını da biz qeyd edə bilərik. Və təbii ki, müxtəlif beynəlxalq turnirlərin final qarşılaşmalarının və maraqlı bir çox idman növləri beynəlxalq turnirlərin, Avropa və dünya səviyyəli yarışların keçirilməsini də biz nümunə qeyd edə bilərik. Dostlar, bizim canlı yayımımız davam edir. Mən geniş məlumatları sizin diqqətinizə çatdırdım. İndi gəlin həm də Gibson və Gibson timsalında digər çıxışlara da yer verək və onların məruzələrini rahat bir şəkildə də dinləyək. Buyurun.
It's instant. So in that moment, there is somebody who knows absolutely nothing about football. Maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning in some dark room and suddenly making a judgment on a player who they don't know in an environment they don't know. And that can then have a really strong impact on their mental health. And so we have to be aware of that as we go forward. And also it's changed for the media. The media have to now produce speedy updates. No good, nobody waits till the next day anymore. I want to know what's happened and I want to know now. The attention economy is shrinking. We used to say in 2000 when we were in Sydney that people's attention span was 12 seconds. Now it's 8 seconds. And actually the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So it shows that people move very fast through information. Finally, the information highway is only going to get more technical and more advanced. The speed of data and the information is only going to improve for federations, for coaches, and for players. It's the future, and the future's here today. And the future will only develop even more as in the years to come, and it will develop at a much faster speed. So, Chosao, thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. As I say, I feel a little bit of an imposter with all these great scientific minds, but one of the things that media does allow sports to fund the research that everybody on the table here is doing so fantastically, and some of the people in the room. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. I invite Mr. Dennis Remedius, the faculty member in Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation Master's Program at ASAPES, consultant radiologist at Northwick Park Hospital, and a tutor on the radiology Red Dot Trauma, delivering his speech on imaging for international multi-sport games, experience in the Caspian countries and globally. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind words, and I do thank the organisers for the opportunity of being here today to share with you what is very much your legacy and perhaps a little bit of mine. Like the previous speaker, I have had 9 years of experience working with my colleagues here in Azerbaijan, and that this has given me the... faster than I think. It's given me the opportunity to share with you the work that we have done over the last 9 years in the various multi-sport games. I'm sorry, this has gone mad. Let me just see if I can bring you back to the beginning. I have worked in the first European Games in 2015 and the Islamic Solidarity Games in 2017 here in Baku. And if I can get this to move me, we're back in sync. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the multi-sport games in the Caspian countries, particularly focusing on imaging, which is my particular specialty. You will know better than I do that there are 5 Caspian countries: Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Russia and Turkmenistan. And I have also included some of the global multi-sport games to show the similarities and to show examples of good practices. Stop, be good. Well, multi-sport games are high-profile events. They are expensive. You've heard how much they cost to host. You have heard how important it is to get the message right. Many countries participate, and the media that goes out to these countries is so important to get right first time. Although the host nation organises these games, there is oversight in most of these games by international organisations. Often it's the International Olympic Committee or the Regional Olympic Committees. The planning is a huge part of these games, and it takes into account knowledge of previous games, of the sports involved, the athletes participating, and indeed interaction with other work streams, including media. This is a busy slide, and don't look at the whole thing. I'll try and summarise the important parts of it. I've included here the key multi-sport games over the last 20-odd years in this region, starting from the Women's Islamic Games in Tehran, the Asian Winter Games held in Astana, Almaty, Kazakhstan. Of course, we held the Olympic Games in London in 2012. The Olympic Winter Games were in Sochi. The first European Games in Baku, 2015. The Summer Olympiad in Rio de Janeiro. The Islamic Solidarity Games here in Baku in 2017. Across the Caspian in Ashgabat, there were the Asian Indoor Games in 2017. And, of course, the Olympiad in Tokyo, which was somewhat plagued by COVID. Finally, I've used the most recent multi-sport game, the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham from last year. You will notice how many athletes are involved. You're talking about thousands, many thousands of athletes. You're talking about many dozens of teams. You're talking about dozens of sports. You're talking about perhaps a dozen or so venues. But more importantly, the human side of the volunteers that take part and make these games work is also massive. 70,000 in London and 80,000 in Tokyo. There are challenges to the imaging services, and I will try and concentrate on these. I will also try and give you some idea of the way in which we've overcome these challenges. The scope of the service is important, and that takes into account the budgets. We keep coming back to cost, and this is something that we can't get away from. There is an actual financial cost, and there is a human cost. The human cost is something that we perhaps overlook, and it's the volunteer workforce, which is so important in every branch, in every work stream of the multi-sport games. We've tried to overcome this in radiology by including teleradiology to help with the utilization of existing services in the host countries. This way, the rather limited modalities on site can be augmented by the excellent provision elsewhere in the countries, MRI in particular. Communication is the name of the game. Communication, the medium, is the message. You've heard enough about that, but I will actually say one or two words, if I may, in that electronic communication is the way forward. You've heard that message from the last speaker. I will reiterate that message. For requests, for reports, for imaging investigations, this now should be done electronically. The language is also important. The national language and English are the two languages commonly used in most multi-sport games, but we take into account that there are other languages. The United Nations recognizes 6 languages. You can see them there. And making the message is important in the language, if at all possible, the languages spoken by competitors and their teams. Identification of the athlete and indeed in the accredited individual is important. You might say, well, it's obvious, but not if your script, your Cyrillic script, is different to the Romanic script that we use for modalities, not if the characters used for certain countries, China, Korea, Japan, is not easily recognized. Accreditation number has been used, and we would certainly recommend that this is used in further games. Learn from how things are done well elsewhere, and this will prevent errors later going forward. Confidentiality is absolutely essential for the athletes, for the teams, and indeed for the games. And this must be taken into account in technology systems. In imaging, we have several technology systems that we work through. One, of course, is the PACS systems for images. Another, of course, is the reporting systems. And the third is the interface with the game systems. and all of these should ensure that confidentiality is there. Epidemic illness, say no more, COVID in Tokyo, but more commonly we see gastroenteritis plaguing systems, games, and that we need to make provision in radiological services for general radiology. Chest x-rays and abdominal ultrasound are the ones that we have had to provide in several of the games that I've been involved in. These are appreciated by many. The expectations from the games are huge and ever growing. These expectations are based somewhat on previous games and on the norm, on the expectations in the host country, not just the host countries, but the countries of the competitors, of the athletes. I will give you a small figure in that 50% of requests that we receive in imaging are from the National Olympic Committee physicians, and a lot of these are in very sophisticated countries. The provision of the imaging and indeed of the reports should be commensurate with these expectations. The workforce and the equipment is important. Where there are partners that are able to provide such equipment, such as at the Olympic Games, there is wonderful equipment within the Olympic villages, but at a cost. At the 2012 London Games, this cost for imaging equipment alone was 11 million, although when you take into account the networking and the time it took for the sponsoring partner, GE, to provide such equipment, it was more like 30 million. Teleradiology is one of the ways in which we can get around some of these massive costs, and I say this as an example of good practice where the budget is limited, and that is every single budget for every single games. This linked together with other ways of communicating information which is already embedded, such as electronic patient records within the games technology setup, has made it more easy to live within budgets. Where there is a single venue, and Ashgabat in 2017, Turkmenistan, gave us this example, you can have a very comprehensive polyclinic with all the imaging modalities on site, and that is wonderful for us, the radiologists, more so for the athletes and the teams, where everything is there within the walls, the confines of the village. Not always possible, though. The polyclinic, which is the medical facility through which the athletes and the teams work through, we found those with a multidisciplinary conference room provided the opportunity and the venue to show images. A picture tells 1,000 words, and that sometimes showing the images is far, far more useful than a report alone. The ability to transfer electronic image files enable these images to be interpreted and reviewed off-site, perhaps in the home countries of the athletes taking part in the games. Well, the modalities you will be familiar with. MRI and ultrasound I put at the top of the list because these image the soft tissues, and indeed MRI images bone stress injuries. Ultrasound helps with guided interventions, and sometimes the information you may get is similar from both, and this is MRI on the top, ultrasound on the bottom of a grade 2 muscle injury, perhaps giving you the same information, but perhaps needing a little bit more interpretation for the ultrasound image. Computer tomography is particularly useful for head injury, in fighting sports, and also in high-speed sports for those involved in winter games. This was actually an important part of it. Also in abdominal injuries. And we shouldn't forget the dental radiography. This sounds like a Cinderella area, but it's very, very important for contact sports. And this is one of the areas which has been overlooked in previous games, which I draw your attention to. What about the people providing the services? The games radiologists should have, of course, experience, and that goes without saying. They should be standardized reports, grading should be standardized, and that there should be some knowledge of general radiology. And I mentioned the imaging of illness, pandemic illness perhaps, but more so for things like gastroenteritis. Whether or not your radiologists at the games are paid radiologists or volunteer radiologists, you will find that the quality is more determined by the background, the experience of the radiologist, and the amount at which the radiologist is driven. He is driven to provide an excellent service because he can and because he has fun at the games. Rotas should of course take into account the periods of high demand. I've shown you a graph here taken from the Baku European Games of the hours of the day in which imaging is needed. Thankfully for radiologists, we can sleep in until about 8 o'clock in the morning, and after that suddenly it ramps up as the village comes into life and the games start, and the tail off is gradual at the end of the games, where perhaps the boxers and so on come to us with their injuries sustained during the course of their event. For the radiographers, the same thing applies, and the graph I give you here is that during the days of the 2 to 3 week course of the games, slow lead in, it peaks when the track and field events take place. They are, of course, the modality with the greatest number of injuries, and it tails off very gradually until the games village closes down. We try and keep times of exams down to a short time. 15 to 20 minutes is ideal so that we can do all the imaging in the requisite time. Safety is also important. Please don't look at all of the numbers here, but I give you some figures from the various European Games here. And the ones from the European Games will tell you that the NOC, the National Olympic physicians, refer about the same number as the Games physicians. But also look at the two modalities, ultrasound and MRI, and the two of them combined together are about 70% of all of the imaging done at all of the games. And that hasn't changed. That is the similarity of all games. The distribution between the two modalities is somewhat different according to what is available. We can see where the injuries are at the Olympic Games: lower limb, spine, and this is indeed true of the games in Baku. Lower limb injuries, head and spine injuries, common particularly in high-speed sports and alpine sports. Dental injuries, don't forget, in the fighting sports and the wrestling sports. Dislocations, torso injuries in contact sports again. Don't forget, volume is highest with track and field events. I will finish off now with a few words on legacy. And someone once asked me, why do I come back to Baku? Well, before I left Baku the first time, I said that one thing we can leave behind is education and learning for what we do as the medical team in sports. And this is why we are all here today, and I'm pleased to see the legacy is here. Lots see a short-term benefit. I'd like to see a long-term benefit. It has happened here in Baku. The venues may last, but the knowledge and the learning lasts longer. Promotion at all levels has been a common theme. The volunteers get much out of sports, and of course, learning from the medical side of imaging gives a national vision for ethical and international competitive sports. So my take-home points are few but important. All the Caspian countries have hosted multi-sport events, and there are similarities. The similarities in the types of injuries: lower limb, spine injuries, when the peak demand is, times of the day going into the evening and in the middle of the games. Budget, of course, is a limiting factor. I would tell you that imaging is the key to enable our athletes to reach their potential, and that the legacy that we offer, and there must be a legacy, will inspire a generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Remedios. Please meet Professor Aleksandar Nedeljković, Head of PhD Program at University of Belgrade, Serbia, Faculty of Physical Education and Sport. The presentation will be about reaction time in specific sports situations, a novel video-based method.
Thanks for this nice introduction. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here, giving me this unique opportunity to participate in such a great event as this conference definitely is. So let me, at the beginning, remind you on some specific sport situation where reaction time is important in sport. Start in a sprint race, or penalty kick, or different situation in different combat sports such as boxing. So what reaction time is? That is the measure of time from the arrival of a suddenly presented and unanticipated signal to beginning of the response to it. We usually measure reaction time in two different experimental conditions, such as simple reaction time, where the stimulus and appropriate response are known in advance, or choice reaction time, where there are more than one stimulus and more than one corresponding response. Regarding the information regarding the stimulus are processed within the reaction time throughout three different stages, and those are stimulus identification stage, response selection stage, and response programming stage. There are numerous factors that affect the reaction time, and for the purpose of our study, we are mostly interested for the response selection stage and number of stimulus and response alternatives as a factor that affect this stage. So this factor is explained by the Hick laws that state that the time it takes to make a selection increases with the number of alternative responses. The relationship between choice reaction time and logarithmic function of stimulus response alternatives is depicted on the figure on the right, and we can see that this relationship is linear, and as in any other linear relation, it can be described by the equation of regression line that actually here represent Hick's law. This equation has two different indexes. One is intercept that actually represents simple reaction time, corresponds to stimulus identification stage, and another one is slope or index B that represent speed of decision making that correspond to response selection stage. The literature findings regarding the reaction time in sports prove to be rather inconsistent. Namely, there are studies that show significant differences between elite athletes and beginners, indicating importance of the reaction time in sports. On the other hand, there are also a numerous of studies that didn't show any differences between elite athletes and beginners. So the question is, what might be the possible reason for this inconsistency? We believe that this is the ecological validity of the experimental setup, and in line with this assumption of ours is also the conclusion of Mori and co-workers that states that measuring reaction time in settings that resemble sport-specific situations increases the representativeness of the test and provides more meaningful information regarding the athlete's ability to respond to specific stimuli. Keeping in mind this conclusion, we came to an idea to propose a novel method that assesses reaction time in specific sport situation that is based on the use of sophisticated video technology. So in our first study that was done on karate athletes, we investigated the method that's supposed to improve ecological conditions due to use of both realistic stimulus and...
Əziz və dəyərli izləyicilərimiz, ASAPES YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə yayımımız davam etməkdədir. Bayaqda çıxış edərkən bildirdim ki, biraz məruzə çıxışları özümüzdə dinləmək imkanımız olsun. İndi hazırda növbəti fasiləyə qədər sonuncu məruzə və təqdimatımız var. Bu barədə dedim sizə də məlumatlandırım ki, hazırda səhnədə növbəti təqdimatı ilə Belqrad Universitetinin doktorantura proqramının direktoru professor Aleksandr Nedeljkoviçdir və o xüsusi idman vəziyyətlərində reaksiya müddəti yeni video əsaslı metod mövzusunda məruzəsi ilə çıxış edir. Bundan əvvəl isə Denis Remediusun çıxışı var idi öz məruzəsi ilə. beynəlxalq qarışıq idman növlərinin təsviri Xəzəryanı ölkələrdə və qlobal miqyasda təcrübədən danışdı. Olduqca maraq doğuran məqamlara toxundu. Deniz Sremedius bizim onun təqdimatını çox diqqətli bir şəkildə izləmək imkanımız oldu. O, bir-bir Xəzəryanı ölkələrdə və qlobal miqyasda təcrübə mübadiləsi, hansı ölkələrdə olan yeniliklər, beynəlxalq qarışıq idman növlərinin təsvirini əyani şəkildə də konfrans iştirakçılarının diqqətinə çatdıra bildi. Əslində indiki məruzə də böyük maraqla dinlənilir. Amma bu məruzədən dərhal sonra, təqdimatdan dərhal sonra yenidən yekun qeydlər fonunda ardıcıl yenidən fasilə və daha sonra məruzələr olacaq. Amma hazırda növbəti beynəlxalq elmi konfransda növbəti fasiləyə qədər sonuncu təqdimat və məruzədir. Bu da Aleksandr Nedelişkoviçindir. Bir daha xatırladıram, xüsusi idman vəziyyətlərində reaksiya müddəti yeni video əsaslı metod mövzusunda təqdimatı ilə hazırda səhnədədir. Və bu çıxışlardan sonra fasilədən sonra isə daha 4 məruzə dinləniləcək, təqdimatlar olacaq. Ondan sonra isə yenidən fasilə olacaq. Növbəti fasilədən sonraki təqdimatlar Andrew Len, John Paul Buckley, Roman Yahoda və Bruce Button olacaq. Yekun fikirlər isə Azərbaycan Milli Antidoping Agentliyinin icraçı direktoru Təminə Tağzadədən gələcək. Və bununla da bu təqdimatlardan sonra da növbəti 4 məruzə və təqdimatlardan sonra beynəlxalq elmi konfransın ilk günü öz işini yekunlaşdırmış olacaq.
Repeated measures ANOVA together with coefficient of variation and standard error of measurement showed no significant differences among trials. On the other hand, intra-class correlation coefficient were exceptionally high, indicating very high correlation among 3 consecutive trials. So all these results together indicates high reliability of the novel method. The next figure shows the sensitivity data, and we can see that the karate athletes react faster than beginners in all testing situations, and also that both karate athletes and beginners react faster in simple reaction time conditions compared to two-choice reaction time conditions. So all these results together indicates high sensitivity, and both with high reliability, we can recommend this novel method for routine testing of reaction time in specific sport situation. It was very interesting to see the result of the standard reaction time tests that we apply on the same group of subjects. These results indicate no differences among these groups, meaning that karate athletes didn't react faster when they were taken out of specific karate situation. So this proved our assumption that ecological validity of the experimental setup is very important when reaction times want to be assessed. Our next study was done on fencers, and we measure reaction time in specific fencing situation. The problem that we wanted to investigate regards the information processing speed that could be dependent on expertise level. The aim of our study was to investigate the impact of the number of stimulus responses alternatives on reaction time under quasi-realistic fencing situation, particularly to elucidate whether the regression slope based on the reaction time and the number of stimulus responses alternatives could distinguish between beginners and experienced fencers. As you can see, we used the same experimental setup as in our previous study. The only difference was that here we had 4 stimulus, as you can see on this slide. Stimulus 1 and 2 indicates the model that performs so-called opening, indicating to the subjects to perform attack. And stimulus 3 and 4, we can see model who perform attack, indicating to the subjects to defend. So the results shown here indicate also that the fencers react faster than beginners in all testing situations, and that recorded reaction time in both fencers and beginner was significantly faster in simple reaction time compared to two-choice reaction time, and in two-choice reaction time was significantly faster compared to four-choice reaction time. These results here proved that Higgs law could also apply in specific sport situations. But the most important finding here regards the regression slopes, the regression line that fit 3 experimental points in both fencers and beginners. And what we can see here, we can see that the regression slopes in fencers are more flat than in beginners, where are more steeper, indicating higher speed of information processing in fencers. These findings was confirmed by statistical analysis, and we can see the result of the independent t-test that showed significant differences in slopes between fencers and beginners. Our next study on fencers investigated the effect of different instruction. So we wanted to see sport performance efficiency that might be influenced by the direction of attentional focus. And the aim of this study was to determine the instruction that maximize fencing attack performance in beginners and experienced fencers, particularly to explore the sensitivity of an efficiency index that makes into account reaction time, velocity of attack, and absolute error to discriminate between beginners and experienced fencers. We use 3 instructions for the subjects: to react as fast as possible, to perform the attack as fast as possible, and to be as accurate as possible. And we proposed 3 different hypotheses. The first one was that beginners would obtain a higher efficiency index when receiving internal focus instructions, such as react as fast as possible and perform the attack as fast as possible. The second one was experienced fencer would show a higher efficiency index when receiving external focus instructions, such as be as accurate as possible. And the final one was that regardless of the instruction, the efficiency index would be better for experienced fencer compared with beginners due to better values of reaction time, velocity of attack, and absolute error. Sorry. Here you can see how we actually calculate this efficiency index. This calculation is based on the best results. And any single results was presented as a relative value of the best result as a percentage of it. So the total efficiency index was actually the sum of these 3 percentages obtained on reaction time, velocity of attack, and absolute error. So efficiency index was between 0% and 100%, where 100% is theoretically the best performance. Of course, it was never 100%, but it was approximately 60, 70, up to 80% of efficiency. So this figure here shows us efficiency index in 2 different groups of subjects, fencers and beginners. We can see the gray column that indicates higher efficiency index in fencers compared to beginners. These broken lines here represent the results of the single subjects. And what we can see also here is that fencers perform more stable with less variability, while the beginners was with more variability in performance. But the most important finding is regarding the instruction. We can see that the instruction be as accurate as possible is the most effective in fencers, and this instruction is direct attentional focus externally. On the other hand, instructions such as react as fast as possible and attack as fast as possible that direct attentional focus internally were more effective in beginners. That was in line with our hypotheses and also in line with some theoretical prediction. Our final and our last study was done on soccer players. Here we wanted to evaluate the modification of previously proposed video-based method. This modification was that we didn't use camera for kinematical analysis, but we used two force plates. And as you can see on this photo here, we see subjects and model who stands on two force plates, and the reaction time was calculated based on the signals that were recorded by the force plates. And again, the results showed high reliability and high sensitivity of this modified version. So it can also be recommended for routine testing of reaction time in specific sport situation as the first version. And finally, at the end, let me introduce you very briefly with our plans for the future research. We want to see how does fatigue affect reaction time in sport. We want to see both physical fatigue and mental fatigue and their effects. We also want to see whether there are differences of this effect in 3 stages of human information processing, and also is there differences between experts and beginners. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Nedeljković. Dear conference attendees, this is the end of the first session, and it's a high time to have a lunch break. The break will be 1 hour. We kindly ask you to come back to your seats at 2 sharp. Enjoy the break. Thank you.
Nədir? Arzular. Arzular. Buradan çək. Sərdiş buradan çək. Elə. Yan. Cibimdə yox. Elə. Arxadan par gəlir.
Necə deyəm, bilən pozub bir şey. Ay, bir də fikirləşmə.
Yaxşıdır. Mikrofon açıq qalır. Niyə belə? Insta. Höp. Deyəm, onu necə söndürəyim? Push. Sönmür bu. Yaxşı danışmırıq. Belə. Əziz və hörmətli konfrans iştirakçıları. Sağ.
Отсюда вид хороший.
Otur. Burada bir olsun, çəkilir. Oradan çəkilir. Çək. Nədir? Bir daha onu çək.
Test 1-2. 1-1 test. Orada görmürəm axı. Ha, gördüm. Test 1-2. Sağ ol.
Hörmətli qonaqlar, zəhmət olmasa yerlərinizi alasınız. Hörmətli qonaqlar, zəhmət olmasa yerlərinizə əyləşəsiniz, konfrans davam edir. Ehtiyacınız varsa, çıxışda yerləşən stola yaxınlaşıb əldə edə bilərsiniz. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is the start of the second session. In this session, we shall listen to 4 remarkable speeches from professors on diverse subjects. The floor now is Mr. Andrew Lanes, who is a faculty member in sports medicine and rehabilitation, master's program at ASAPES, the chartered psychologist by the British Psychological Society, fellow of the British Association of Sport and Exercise Sciences. He will deliver his speech on mood profiles for performance and health. The floor is yours.
Right. This is interesting. Okay. Right. Right, thank you. The afternoon slot after lunch is always a difficult one. So let's see how we're going. We're looking at mood and performance. This is an area of research and practice that I've been doing for nearly 30 years. And what we're going to be looking at is some of the science behind some of the work. We're going to be looking at the application of it, and hopefully we're going to have some sort of practical guidelines so that you can actually use it. Let's see if this works. You see, you're not the only one. Oh, here we go. Right, good. It's the left-hand side you'd press. So mood and performance, starting off with a nice anecdote, just to sort of capture why we use this, why is it important? Well, we've got a lovely quote there from Usain Bolt. I commented this for Sky Sports, so I can do a bit of showing off there. But in essence, it captures what we hear often anecdotally from sports people. That psychological factors have an impact on performance, and here we get the terms of anxiety got the better of me, and I never really felt I wanted to run. I've never felt that way before.
Değerli dostlar, əziz izləyicilər, ASAP'in YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə, rəsmi YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə yayımımız davam edir. Qısa müddətli fasilədən sonra biz yenidən buradayıq və beynəlxalq elmi konfransda növbəti daha 4 məruzələr olacaq, təqdimatlar olacaq. İndi hazırda nahar fasiləsindən sonra elmi konfransa iştirak edə dəvət olunacaq. Bütün qonaqlar öz yerlərini alıblar. Bugünkü elmi konfransda həm qonaqlar, həm müxtəlif universitetlərin, beynəlxalq universitetlərdən təmsilçilər, xarici ölkə nümayəndələri, idman ictimaiyyətinin nümayəndələrimiz, müxtəlif idman təşkilatlarının nümayəndələri, Gəncə İdman Nazirliyinin nümayəndələri və digər şəxslər iştirak edirlər. Və məlumat üçün bir daha bildiririk ki, bugünkü startı verilən konfrans Ümummilli lider Heydər Əliyevin 100 illiyinə həsr olunan idman elmlərinin inkişafında müasir tendensiyalar mövzusunda ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfransdır. Və bugün ərzində idman psixologiyası, idman tibbi, idman menecmenti və idman hüququ kimi istiqamətləri əhatə edən aktual mövzularda məruzələr baş tutur. Və indi növbəti biz məruzəni də görmə imkanımız var. Bu performans və səhhətə uyğun əhval göstəricilərə mövzusunda olan bir təqdimatdır. Təqdimat çıxışında isə Andrew Len yer alıb. Andrew Len Wolverhampton Universitetinin idman psixologiyası üzrə professoru, Səhiyyə Peşəkarları Şurası ilə qeydiyyata alınmış praktiki psixoloqu, İdman Performansı Bülleteninin Rəyasət Heyətinin Britaniya İdman və Məşq Elmləri Asosiasiyasının da üzvüdür. Və bu çıxışdan sonra isə onlayn bağlantılar da olacaq. Yeri gəlmişkən məruzə və təqdimatlar üçün birbaşa bizim konfransdan onlayn bağlantı olacaq. John Paul Buckley və Roman Yahodanın biz təqdimatlarını onlayn bir şəkildə onlayn qoşulma vasitəsi ilə görə biləcəyik. John Paul Buckley'nin təqdimatı ürək ağciyər reabilitasiyasında ilkin fəaliyyətlərinin əhəmiyyətinin nəzərə alınması, daha yaxşı sağlamlıq üçün gəzmək, mahnı oxumaq və rəqs etməkdir. Roman Yahodan isə onlayn bağlantıda təqdimatı ümumidən xüsusiyə zədələrin qarşısının alınması, reabilitasiya və performans mövzusuna aiddir. Və bugünkü elmi praktik konfransın ilk gününün son təqdimat məruzəsi isə Bruce Patton tərəfindən olacaq. Bruce Patton əzələ skelet sisteminin reabilitasiyasında qan axınının məhdudlaşdırılması ilə güc məşqi mövzusu olacaq. Bruce Patton UCL-ın nəzdində fəaliyyət göstərən İdman, Fiziki Fəaliyyət və Sağlamlıq İnstitutunun fəxri kliniki lektorudur və həmçinin UCL-ın İdman və Fiziki Sağlamlıq magistr proqramının modul rəhbəridir və həmçinin UCL-ın məsləhətçi fizioterapevtidir. Və bütün bu təqdimatlardan sonra son çıxış və qeydlər olacaq və bununla da elmi praktik konfransın ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfransın ilk günü yekunlaşacaq. Sabah da müxtəlif məzmunlu sessiyalarla konfrans öz işini ASAP'də İdman Akademiyasına davam etdirəcək və 1 dekabr tarixində idman elminin müxtəlif sahələrini əhatə edən praktiki təqdimatlar və müzakirələr olacaq və bu müzakirələrlə də ikinci beynəlxalq elmi praktiki konfransa yekun vurulacaq. Mən elə fasilədən öncə də sabah reallaşacaq sessiyaların bir çoxunun mövzu və gündəliklərini də açıqlamışdım sizə və bu barədə də bilgi təqdim etmişdik. Bir daha xatırladaq ki, bu konfrans Azərbaycan Dövlət Bədən Tərbiyəsi və İdman Akademiyasının təşkilatçılığı ilə reallaşır. Növbəti bir çıxışa tam olaraq biz təqdimatlara da baxmaq istəyirik. Gəlin Ümummilli diqqətlə dinləyək. Performans və səhhətə uyğun əhval göstəriciləri mövzusu üzrə təqdimatı davam edir. Bir də xatırladam ki, bu təqdimatdan dərhal sonra John Paul Buckley və Roman Yahodanın onlayn qoşulma vasitəsilə mövzular üzrə məruzəsi və təqdimatı gerçəkləşmiş olacaq.
Inverse iceberg and inverse Everest. And the argument, the point for that is that practitioners can use the profile of mood states or Brum's equivalent, and by putting them into that profile, can then have a very quick and easy way of going, if someone's displaying an inverse iceberg, that is an area of concern. I more recently took some research which used this data set from a project we did with the BBC. It's a very large data set. It ran online across the Olympics, of which people reported their mood states at the start of some psychological intervention. So we have 72,000 people in this study. The clock just changed then, went 15 straight down, and it's now on a countdown. That's actually quite exciting on the left screen, you can't see it. But what we ended up with is very similar sort of mood profiles to what we've got from using the other scale. And the idea that this emergence of the inverse iceberg, the iceberg, shark fin, inverse Everest and submerged, occurs. They are the mood profiles that seem to capture what people are experiencing, and therefore from moving that to what practitioners will be using, simply score the questionnaire and then judge how you use that scale. So that's how the frequencies that you've got. You've got over 20,000 people submerged. In other words, they're in a very flat mood state. Its connections to some of the interesting, or how people manage those moods in that positive mood iceberg, connects with reappraisal. Reappraisal is thinking things through differently. Suppression connects, which is suppression emotions, which is not necessarily a good thing, is associated with the inverse iceberg. And in using psychological skills, again, using icebergs. So the encouragement of being active in your mindset to try and improve your mood is coming out findings from, again, 72,000 people. This starts working together to where we were going with this and some more of our more recent work, and the idea that if mood connects to multiple health issues, mood predicts with performance, then management around mood might be quite useful. The idea that all of those different treatments, well, you're going to need multiple therapists, so the idea that if you address mood as a common feature, you actually get something called a trans-diagnostic approach, and trans-diagnostic interventions are ultimately very useful, because by implementing on one variable, you end up with treating very many variables. We then get to this model which is about using the profile of mood state so people can then either try to recognize, am I feeling an emotion which has got a distinct cause that the individual knows about, or am I feeling a mood state where the person doesn't exactly know what they're feeling about? Well, that first stage could be seen as somewhat academic, but then we move into the phase which we think is the most interesting, because the idea that mood states are treated by restoring the homeostasis of how someone's feeling. And that restoring is then a largely physiological intervention, where the person is will be looking at things like improving sleep, improving their diet, physical activity. And then on a later stage, the idea that the intervention would move to regulate would be more around psychological skills. So it sends it in sequence. So if it's mood, we look to restore the homeostasis, and the candidates being sleep, diet and exercise. So when someone's feeling in a very poor mood, rather than seek a rather elaborate intervention, mental, psychological skills, targeted around the simplistics of sleep, diet and exercise, which can bring the persons back to a better homeostasis. Chris Beattie and Peter Terry and I had a very good meeting earlier in the week with data of around 700 people where that really is coming out very good. So, which I knew about prior to putting this talk together. It's one reason I put it in. But if you're emotionally trying to resolve that, and therefore you try to rethink those. And that study I talked about earlier, the one we did in 2016, 70,000 people, what we found very nicely is that brief psychological interventions around imagery, imagining yourself doing a task, can have an effect of improving how well you do at that task, simultaneously can alter the emotional states you're in. And what that says from that is that developing simple self-help videos is a useful tool for people to be able to learn psychological skills. One of the problems people have with psychological skills is that they feel a bit awkward and odd to do because they're not. It's not like learning to head a football. It's not like because where there's a clear set of feedback. This type of project did give it a set of feedback because you practice a psychological skill, then you have a go at a task, and you can monitor how clearly you either saw the imagery, use the self-talk, and you can connect that to how you're going to perform. But the idea that learning should be active. So I thought I'd have about 4 slides to go. I've still got 3 minutes left, but that's all right. So our conclusions in and around this are feelings are a source of information that impact your mental health. Assessing people's moods and emotions via the simple self-report scales is a very good way to raise self-awareness of what people are feeling. And that in itself becomes an intervention in itself, because once people realise they are feeling different to how they should be, they start thinking about how they can alter that psychological state. Going through the process model which Chris Beattie in the Restore, Regulate approach, the idea of restoring one's homeostasis and focusing on sleep, focusing on diet, focusing on physical activity as recommendations to improve your mood, should set up lights for all those illnesses I put in earlier on, because the interventions to improve those will also have improved physical activity, and the idea that physical activity in itself is put as a trans-diagnostic intervention with multiple different benefits. For our sports people, that would need to be explained in a way that the exercise is designed to be low intensity, designed to be enjoyable. It's why connecting in nature is a very good way is a very good context in which to do exercise in if you want to improve your mood. Going in and around that, then learning psychological skills is worth it, but you have to commit to investing the time in order to be able to do so. What we did in that study with the BBC was develop self-help videos which are really short and quite easy to do so, and that would be a line of research and an approach that could be done in the future. And what you're doing from both of those things is that across all of this is that the scale is scalable, so you can give it to one person and you can give it to 100,000 people. The advice around restoration is trans-diagnostic, so it'll affect multiple different benefits. So you can give it to one person and give it to lots of people. And then the idea that you learn psychological skills in that type of way by developing a resource works at an individual level, scales up. What you have in the mood is an online measure, and I'll get this all to you, but you can go and complete that. It gives you feedback immediately at the end to what your mood state is. It's set up online by Peter Terry. What I think we could do is do a version of that for the languages in which your clients work in, as we have done to multiple other languages. And look at that, time's up in red. What you don't realise, you've got two screens here. One of them says the thing and the other one says a time, and it said time's up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Now, John Paul Buckley will join us online. He is a faculty member of Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation Master's Program in ASAPAS, Professor of Exercise Rehabilitation of Keele University, Fellow of the Higher Education Authority, Fellow of the British Association of Sport and Exercise Sciences, Founding Chair of International Council of Cardiovascular Prevent and Rehab, and WHO panel member of ischemic heart disease and rehabilitation. His speech will be about considering the value of primeval activities in cardiopulmonary rehabilitation, walking, singing, and dancing towards better health.
Hello, can I just test that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very pleased to also follow my friend, Professor Andy Lane, who I've known for 30 years. It's a pleasure to be there with you. I'd also like to say thank you to the colleagues at ASAPS, especially the people who've engaged me with the master's program in sports medicine, Mike Loosemore, Takmina, Zarifa, Connell, and I would especially like to say thank you to all the MSc sports medicine students over the past 5 years that I've had the pleasure of working with, and I'm sorry I couldn't come back to Baku for this wonderful meeting that you're having. It looks fantastic. I'm speaking to you from my home in Shrewsbury in the United Kingdom. It is the home and birthplace of Charles Darwin, and you can see Shrewsbury is sort of near Birmingham, just below Liverpool and Manchester, where Charles Darwin was born and educated, and where he came up with the idea that survival of any mammal, animal, was related to their ability to be fit and to adapt to their environment. And this is what this talk really is mainly about, is about getting patients with heart disease or pulmonary disease to adapt to their situation, which includes being more physically active and getting enough exercise. We see that ischemic heart disease, stroke, and constructive pulmonary disease are the leading causes of death globally, so you can see why the World Health Organization is keen on these. And in July 2023, as part of this team, I'm very proud to be part of the team that helped write the package of interventions for cardiopulmonary conditions for rehabilitation, and this is now available for all of you to get online. Essentially what it says is that for cardiopulmonary rehabilitation, we have two levels of benefit. We have direct benefits in showing that people who engage in exercise-based rehabilitation after a diagnosis or a treatment for a cardiac or pulmonary condition improves their life expectancy, improves their quality of life. It prevents people from going back into hospital in the future, and therefore it saves the health economy a significant amount of money. More importantly, and reflecting on some of the points that our previous speaker, Professor Lane, mentioned, are the social and psychological benefits of rehabilitation for these people. It returns people back to a productive...
Değerli dostlar, əziz izləyicilərimiz, ASAPS-in YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə, rəsmi YouTube kanalı vasitəsilə canlı yayımımız davam edir. Mən ara sıra biz təqdimatlara da geniş bir formada yer veririk. Hər təqdimatda mən qısa sizə xülasə edim bu barədə. Endro'nin ardınca indi bayaq da qeyd etdiyim kimi onlayn bağlantımız var. Onlayn qoşulma var hazırda elmi beynəlxalq konfransımıza. Və bu konfransda hazırda John Paul Buckley'ni biz dinləyirik və onun təqdimatına baxırıq. Təqdimatçısı sırf ürək ağciyər reabilitasiyasında ilkin fəaliyyətlərin əhəmiyyəti nəzərə alınmasıdır və daha yaxşı sağlamlıq üçün gəzmək, mahnı oxumaq və rəqs etmək mövzusudur və Əslində mən burada özüm də təqdimatına baxıram. Burada müxtəlif aspektlər və komponentləri özündə əhatə edir və ürək ağciyər reabilitasiyasının ilkin fəaliyyətlərin əhəmiyyəti nəzərə alınması ilə bağlı Ümumdünya Səhiyyə Təşkilatının və dünya üzrə olan ürək birlikləri federasiyalarının və beynəlxalq hansı ki təşkilatların bu sahədəki istiqamətlərini və ardıcıllığını, öhdəlik və tələblərin formasını izah edir və həmçinin burada illər üzrə planlamalara da geniş yer verir. Və əlavə edim ki, John Paul Buckley İngiltərənin Kiel Universitetinin İdman reabilitasiyası üzrə professorudur və Böyük Britaniyanın İdman və Fiziki Fəaliyyət Elmləri Assosiasiyasının akreditə olunmuş idman və fiziki hərəkətlər fiziologu, klinik fizioloqlar konsulluğunun idman və fiziki hərəkətlər fiziologiyası üzrə mütəxəssisidir və öz ixtisası üzrə də yeri gəlmişkən də burada davam etdirir. Çünki bunu sırf John Paul Buckley'nin öz ixtisasıdır. Çünki özü də ürək damar xəstəliklərinin profilaktikası və reabilitasiyası üzrə beynəlxalq nizamnamənin də həm müəllifidir və buradakı indi biz qeydlərə də yer verirdik burada. Çünki 3 komponentlərin həm ürək damar xəstəlikləri üzrə və ümumiyyətlə ürək ağciyər daha doğrusu reabilitasiyası üzrə xəstəliklərin profilaktikası və reabilitasiyası üzrə beynəlxalq nizamnamələr nəyi tələb edir, onun da izahını verməyə çalışır təqdimatında. Və əlavə edim ki, John Paul Buckley özü Ümumdünya Səhiyyə Təşkilatının ürəyin işemik xəstəliyinin reabilitasiyası üzrə də məsləhətçi qrupun da üzvüdür. John Paul Buckley'nin təqdimatından sonra biz daha bir onlayn bağlantının canlı şahid olacaq və bu isə Roman Yahodaya aid olan bir təqdimat olacaq. Roman Yahoda isə ümumidən xüsusiyə zədələrin qarşısına alınması, reabilitasiya və performans mövzusunda bir təqdimatı ilə çıxış edəcək onlayn vasitəsilə və Roman Yahodanın da digər bizim dünya idman aləmində kifayət qədər çəkisi olan şəxslərdən sayılır və hansı ki buna qədər Emily, John Paul Buckley, Dennis Remedios və hansı ki nahar fasiləsindən öncə də məruzələri dinlənilən və çox maraqla qarşılanan istər Michael Paul Luzmar'dır, istər Amanda Jane Pinkney'dir, Raymond Gibson'dır və digərləri kimi Roman Yahoda da bu sahədə öz ixtisası üzrə təcrübəli şəxslərdən biridir. Və Roman Yahoda özü isə Avstriyanın Kompleks Kor Təşkilatının icraçı direktorudur və Azərbaycan Dövlət Bədən Tərbiyəsi İdman Akademiyasının da Bədən Tərbiyəsi və İdmanda Reabilitasiya Bakalavr ixtisasının direktorudur. İndi biz növbəti təqdimatın dinləməsinə də yer verək. Sonra davam edəcək. Bir daha bildirirəm ki, 30 dekabr tarixindən sonra, 30 noyabr tarixindən sonra 1 dekabr tarixi üzrə elmi beynəlxalq konfransın ikinci günü sessiyalarla davam edəcək.
If we go to the right-hand column, that if these patients, based on their level of fitness, if they used greater than 50% of their peak METs or their peak exercise capacity, this would be at an intensity equivalent to simply walking at 3 to 4 kilometers per hour. So something quite achievable. And for many of you in the room, this would be a light walk, but for many patients with cardiopulmonary disease, this would be a moderate to vigorous walk, which would meet the intensity for the recommendations we see in our global guidelines. I've looked at a number of studies and systematic reviews linked to various types of pulmonary and heart disease, from obstructive pulmonary disease, heart failure, older people with heart disease, and various programs. And the last program, even on a high-intensity interval training program, which was published by Gordon McGregor in Coventry. And the reason why I highlight that is that Andy Lane, 30 years ago, was a tutor for Gordon, who became a researcher with me and went on to be one of the leaders in cardiac rehab in the UK in Coventry. So this is my connection with Andy, is that his colleagues at Wolverhampton recommended Gordon come and see me almost 30 years ago for training. But again, if we look at a number of studies, it looks like that if they're achieving, and I've set the bar at 60% of their maximal exercise capacity, this would be equivalent to walking at 2.7 to 4.2 kilometers per hour, again, for these patients. So we can see that simply getting people to walk provides enough stimulus for their meeting the cardiac rehabilitation or pulmonary rehabilitation standards. Now, if people are interested in other social activities, we can look at things like dancing, which is, again, a very primeval activity. There's a nice review here on the energy expenditure of recreational ballroom dancing. And the simple act of waltzing is measured at about 4 to 5.5 METs, or it has the intensity of equivalent to walking at 5 to 6 kilometers per hour. So we can see that something sociable, such as dancing, again, meets that stimulus for many, many patients in terms of the level of fitness that they have. This is a dance therapy meta-analysis from people in Brazil, and in Brazil, they have promoted the use of dance because the Brazilians love to dance as the exercise component for cardiac rehab. And in these trials, they've shown that there was a significant improvement in aerobic power, VO2 peak, and health-related quality of life in the dance group compared to the control group. So in terms of its value, it does show that it can achieve the fitness gains that we require. And then looking at how this compares when they had the studies that compared exercise, traditional exercise in the gym, to a dance session, they found that there was no greater benefit from the exercise group than the dance group. They both achieved the same amount of benefit. So it's really good news that dancing therapy for many patients with chronic diseases of the heart and the lungs can achieve that by other means than just going to the gymnasium as we traditionally propose. Finally, one of the things that we love to do in our cultures around the world is people love to sing. And we know that. I'm sure that many of you are football fans, and it is amazing how people love to sing when we have sporting events. And so all we need is groups of people, and for people with pulmonary health conditions, there is evidence showing that singing can be used to improve quality of life and respiratory muscles in patients with COPD. Furthermore, choir singing in people with heart failure and structural heart disease also achieve similar benefits for their lungs, because we know that when people with have structural heart problems such as heart failure, they have a reduced pulmonary health and pulmonary function as well. In this study, they combined singing with respiratory muscle training. So you could use the singing to bring people together. This could attract them to attend, and they could sing, but you may also be able to get them to do some targeted muscle strength training of the respiratory muscles at the same time. So here is what Andy was trying to allude to in, in the previous talk, that we need to create an environment where activity is enjoyable and sociable, and our medieval and primeval activities of walking, singing, and dancing seem to be a good vehicle for achieving that. So to conclude, walking, dancing, and singing provide increased opportunities and access for people to attend cardiopulmonary rehabilitation. Especially true, this could be in low resource settings, because these are things that people do independent of where they live in the world, and most cultures have people walking, singing, and dancing. Provide for lifelong sustainable health and social activities. Often when people go to a gym for a rehabilitation program, it's for a set period of time, and they don't continue on with the program once they're discharged from the care. Whereas if we use cultural activities, we are more likely for them to sustain these in the future as part of their whole life and the rest of their life. All of these have physiological, psychological, and social benefits. And so I'd like to make a proposal, and this is linked to a PhD project of one of your colleagues in Azerbaijan, and a very enthusiastic and intelligent woman, Dr. Zarifa Kamilova, who I work with at ESAPES for the MSc in sports medicine, that we know that Azerbaijan desires development of cardiac pulmonary rehabilitation, and therefore could local and national traditions of dancing and singing, along with simple walking programs, provide an attractive, cost-effective, and socially beneficial service to these patient groups. Thank you very much.
Our next online guest is Roman Yahoda, the CEO of Complex Core Plus and the Director of the Physical Education and Rehabilitation in Sports Bachelor Program of ASAPES. His speech is about basics to specifics, injury prevention, rehabilitation, and performance.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Am I online? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the short introduction. I'm Roman Yahoda from Austria. I'm a physiotherapist and fitness coach, and as you heard, I'm also the program director at ASAPES for the Bachelors of Rehabilitation. I've been working in the fields of sports and rehabilitation for more than 25 years, and what I experienced that the view is getting more and more narrow, like in physiotherapy, the view on single joint, the view on a single structure. Also in sports, the view just on the little details that doesn't always lead to success. So what I want to do today, I want to turn it around, go a few steps back to the basics, show you the importance of the basics, what the basics are, and how they can influence the outcome in physiotherapy or in performance training. So who do we work with? We heard already some topics today about also women, men, so our target can be women and men. We can have young and old athletes or patients, healthy or injured, with pain, without pain. We can have people who focus just on health, but also athletes who focus on high performance. So let's look at let's say the past, how it was. I hope it isn't anymore. An athlete or a patient gets injured. What happens? They just keep doing with pain, without any medical support. The better way would be, of course, after getting injured, to get a proper rehab. The even better way, if a patient gets injured, a patient gets rehabilitation, gets motivated to keep working on his personal fitness and performance. And the best optimum, best scenario is not to get injured, to start in time with injury prevention, and then even raise the level of performance. So when we look at that, we can have three goals in training: injury prevention, rehabilitation, and performance training. And I want to show you some basic ideas of each of these topics. So what do we have to do to prevent injuries? Many people will say we have to be active. That's true, but this is just a little piece of the big picture. So to prevent injuries, it's good to screen your patient or athlete to know about its strengths and weaknesses, so we know what we have to work on. It's about musculoskeletal fitness. All these topics are included. It's about cardiovascular fitness, if it's dancing or singing or going for a walk, what we heard before. It's about nutrition. It's about hydration. It's about sleep, environment, equipment, mental fitness. We heard about the mood, how it influences the physical outcome. It's about technical skills, warm-up, cool-down, recovery, and also as an athlete or patient to feel ahead if there's something wrong in the body. So to react before injury happens. So you see here the big picture, what to do to prevent injuries. When we talk about rehabilitation, what is the goal? The goal is, of course, to get back to life, back to sport. The goal is also to not to have the re-injury again, so reduce it. And the goal is to get back to performance level. So when we look at the big picture, the timeline, we have an athlete, he performs well, he gets injured. And you see in this picture that rehabilitation training becomes more and more performance training. And this is what we heard already today, this morning, about the art of coaching. I like the idea with the bus. So here we also have to know when does the person gets on the bus and gets out of the bus. When is the time for the doctor? When is the time for the physiotherapist, for the fitness coach, for the sport-specific coach? So they don't have to be there all the time, but we have to know in what phases we need what specialist. So when we do physiotherapy, and this happens many times, a physio works with an injured athlete, even sport-specific rehab, and then he goes back to, let's say, football match. But the structures are not prepared yet. We need the next phase to bring them slowly back to training, and then the phase to bring them back to performance, so we don't have the risk of re-injury. So this is just the big picture of rehabilitation. When we talk about performance, of course, the parameters like the training volume, training intensity, and frequency have to be planned and structured over the long term. So I want to show you that it's important to define the training goal ahead before we start training. So let's have an example. We have a handball player with the focus on upper extremity. If the training would be, the focus would be injury prevention, the exercise could be the mobility of the thoracic spine. If the same athlete would have the goal in rehab, would be stability of the rotator cuff. If the same athlete would work on performance, it could be a reactivity for the shoulder. So we have the same athlete, same age, but different training goal. We'll see the exercise is different, and of course also the training methods will be different. Same idea, lower extremity, a sprinter. For injury prevention, he could do some stretching. In rehabilitation, the goal could be leg axis training. In performance training, could be plyometrics. So again, it's important to define the training goal in training or therapy. Here's the overview. What you see here, the basics, it's the base of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is the performance. So what we see here, the performance is actually just a result of what's happening down there. So let's say a sprinter cannot train just sprinting. He will not become better. He has to work, first of all, on strength, mobility, hip mobility, dynamics, and so on. So here's an example. We want to perform well in high jump. That's just the result, the performance. To perform well, we have to work on the basics. So basic would be, as an example, the mobility of the spine. Imagine a high jumper with a hyperkyphosis of his spine. He will never succeed in his sport. That's why the spine mobility is the basics. Specific training might be plyometrics. And the high jump on the top of the pyramid is just the result. So let's have a look on the basics. Basics mean mobility, flexibility, stability, strength, proprioception, coordination. These are the basics we have to work on. As the earlier, the better. in young ages with children where we should start. Let's have a look on mobility flexibility. How can we improve the range of motion in a joint? Here's just one strategy. The first thing, we can use devices, foam rollers, trigger point balls, hot bath, massage, whatever releases the tension. Step 2, we can use traction on the hip joint with additional material or a physio hands-on. Step 3, we can do static or dynamic stretching. Dynamic movements are, of course, more effective than just static positions. And step number 4, to activate the antagonist, the opposite side, opposite part of the extremity, so we improve the full range of motion. When we talk about stability and strength, the main goal is clear. It's the muscle balance. So when we talk about the core, it's about the muscle balance of the ventral, dorsal, and lateral core. But this applies also to the legs, what we heard today already with the female sports, hip, quadriceps, hamstrings. We need a muscle balance in the body. When we talk about proprioception, what we see around the world, people standing on unstable devices, which is good, but again, it's just a little piece of the big picture. We have receptors in the whole body. So proprioception should be done also for the core area, upper extremities and lower extremities. And when we talk about coordination, what we see many times in football, the coordination ladders, when they run with the legs very fast, great again, but legs is just one part of the big picture. So when we work on coordination, it would be important to combine all body parts in all combinations. Right side with left side, upper extremity, lower extremity, co-integrated, and so on. So that's the big picture of coordination. So now we talk about training. What I see as a big problem, what people still do in fitness, but also in physiotherapy, they start to plan the training by choosing the exercise on YouTube, in books, or somewhere else. But the exercise, the movement, is not the main goal. We talked about it before. We have to define the training. Is it injury prevention? Is it rehabilitation? Is it performance training? So we have to define the training method first before we choose the appropriate exercise. So there are two different things. The general strength, when we talk about strength, which is in general improve strength and build skeletal muscle. Then is also the sport-specific strength that is defined by the requirements what the sport needs. Let's look at some examples. Cyclist. What does the cyclist have to train in strength to become better in his sport? He will need strength endurance as a method. What about the bodybuilder? He might work on maximal strength. What about the weightlifter? He might work with power. What about the hurdle runner? He might need to work on plyometrics. So we see, depending on the sport, the training method has to be completely different. Means different weights, different recovery, different movements, different exercises. So let's have a look on training methods. A simple overview. On the left side, we see the weight and load that is getting more. And on the line, we see the progression. So the first step we work on is modified strength endurance. We can work with our own body weight, so the weight is low, or we can use some additional weight. That's the basis, where we do also injury prevention exercises and so on. The next step, where we have more load with weight, is where we work on maximal strength. That can either be hypertrophy training or intramuscular coordination. After that phase, the weight gets less, but we move it faster. That's then power and plyometrics. And it's important to understand that we have to go through all these phases. Let's say in sports where power is needed, a sprinter cannot start to go to the gym and start with power. He will get injured, or the structures will get overused. He has to start working on strength endurance, after phase maximal strength, after phase going then for power training. The same thing applies also in rehabilitation. If we're an athlete where power is needed in his sport and he gets injured, we still have to go through all these phases. Depending on the injury, Each phase can take maybe a few days, a few weeks, or sometimes after surgeries, few months per stage. And how can we progress? Of course, by changing the different training parameters. That's one step, defining the training method. Or also using simple principles to go from easy to difficult exercises. Simple principle to go from simple movements to complex movements, to go from symmetrical positions to asymmetrical positions, to go from stable to unstable, from body weight to additional weight, from non-specific positions to more specific positions, standing, walking, because in training therapy, we should not always lie on the mat. This is not specific to daily life or sport. So we have to go to specific positions. And also change the speed from static, slow, if it's needed in the sport, fast and explosive. So these are the basic principles, and it's important in the process of rehab and training that at least after 4 weeks, we are changing some of these principles because the body adapts. If we don't change anything, the adaptation goes down. So after 4 weeks, we might change the exercise, we might change the training method, we might change the position, but it's important to always bring him a step higher. So for all these things that I was talking about, ASAPES and me, we were working together now for several years, and for 3 years we were developing this new practice-oriented guide for coaches, physios, students, and we want to provide this knowledge, this practice-oriented knowledge to students around the world, not only Azerbaijan, which contains all these topics in theory from basics, rehabilitation, and so on. And it contains more than 600 exercise variations. So if I say, for example, hip joint, we talked about pelvis and hip today. We have female, we have male, we have 60-year-old patient, we have an Olympic athlete in sprinting. So we have different levels. And we need to find the correct exercises for each individual. So that's why when we talk about hip mobility, we have over 45 exercises for the hip, for everyone from easy to difficult. So it's all structured and systemized, and we also integrated active rehab part in the book, where we, for each symptom, we support the people with finding the right training topics. And here, we also try to keep with the big picture. So if you find a symptom, let's say low back pain, then we will not just suggest to do core training, we will suggest with the book to work on hip mobility, to work on thoracic spine mobility, to see the big picture, which is the modern approach in physiotherapy. So this was our hard work with ASAPES for the last 3 years. It's already finished in English, will be soon in Azeri, Russian, Turkish, we'll do it in German. So we're gonna do it in many languages, and we want to provide this quality of modern approach in training and rehabilitation, not only for Azerbaijan, but around the world. So I hope in this spirit, as you heard, stay active, and I wish you still a nice time at the conference. Thank you very much.
It's time to see the presentation by Dr. Bruce Patton, faculty member of Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation Master's Program at ASAPES, Associate Professor of Institute of Sport Exercise and Health, and Consultant Physiotherapist of University College London. The speech is called Strength Training with Blood Flow Restriction in Musculoskeletal Rehabilitation.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very privileged to be here and speak at such a well-organized convention, so thank you. I'd like to speak about strength training with blood flow restriction, and this is just one part of the big picture. It's a tool that can be used as a part of, as a method to strength train. So let's just...
Could you advance one slide? Here we go. Okay, so I want to start with muscle as an introduction. And muscle is an incredible machine. Active in all of us as we speak. Muscle converts chemical energy into mechanical energy for work, and it does it in an incredibly efficient way. It has a very complex architecture, but it also has a very complex biochemistry. And in muscles biochemistry, there's different biochemistry for strength exercise, but also for endurance exercise. And this is too complex to speak about in entirety, but there's a lot of research on each one of these components. But muscle functions in a lot of different ways. It contracts, it moves, but it also stabilizes. It breaks and slows movement, but it also protects joints. And it protects bones. It's also a sensory organ, and it has multiple roles, but the muscle's role can change depending on the movement, and even on a stage of movement, a muscle's role can change. So Roman talked about training muscles and thinking about the target task. It's important to think about what a muscle is doing in a target task and then train it specifically that way. But so muscle is really key to athletic performance. So coaches really major on muscle and muscle strength for their athletes. But the other big thing that muscle will do is that it prevents injury. It can help to prevent injury. But muscle doesn't just do these things. It's also metabolic tissue. It's an endocrine organ. It secretes chemicals. It's a metabolic tissue that actually burns glucose. It has your body's probably largest number of mitochondria, which is about a quarter of body mass for most people. And it's your body's main protein store. So most of the protein you consume is for muscle. It needs to contract. If you think about cardiac muscle, respiratory muscle, those muscles are active every moment of every day. So those muscles are made to contract. They're not made to stop and to rest. Muscle's healthiest when it's contracting. And that means muscle is very important for health. It's important for aging. It's important for longevity. So this is what happens when you age. When you age, you lose muscle. And they call this sarcopenia. And you can see that you lose motor units. The muscle gets interposed with fat. But this is what happens if you train. So as people age, if they maintain muscle training, they maintain their muscle health. If they don't maintain muscle training, you can see the changes that happen in muscle. But the other thing is that if you maintain training, you don't just have healthier muscle, you also have healthier mitochondria. And mitochondria are in every cell of your body. In cells like neurons, they form a quarter of the volume of the cell. Not just in muscle cells, but mitochondria are more healthy. And mitochondria are your key metabolic organelle within cells. They make ATP, which is the body's main energy currency. There's a lot of big review papers looking at big populations of people, looking at the mortality and morbidity risk with different diseases in people who strength train. Not just with cardiovascular training, but looking at strength training through life. These are two big reviews that have been published recently, looking at very large numbers of people, showing that if you strength train regularly, you can live longer, you can live healthier. So the great news is that even if you're 90 and you start training, your muscle will change. So this is what happens if you do 3 months of training, 3 days a week. The muscle size gets bigger and the muscle will change. It's an incredibly adaptable tissue. And that's why strength training is part of physical activity guidelines in many countries. Most people know about cardiopulmonary part of guidelines, but they forget the strength component of guidelines. And it's important that adults maintain strength activities. And in the UK, we encourage adults to maintain strength activities on at least 2 days of the week. So that means doing strength type of activity on at least 2 days of the week. So in our hospital, we have a gym. So gym's not an obvious thing to have in a hospital, and we really try and teach our patients how to strength train and how to optimize their training and how to get more out of their muscle. So what about our athletes? So what happens with them when they get injured? So you can see some of these injuries, and the injuries result in a lot of time out of sport. They also involve immobilization and trying to fix or immobilize a limb, which means that the muscles don't contract. And the difficulty for an athlete or for anybody is that you lose muscle. When the muscle's not contracting, it starts to waste. And some of the studies looking at how quickly that happens, even with a brace and non-weight bearing with crutches for 1 week, you can lose 5% of the muscle volume in your leg. So these changes are very fast and very significant. Even worse for patients in intensive care or patients on bed rest, the muscle loss can be incredibly significant. They can lose 10% of their muscle mass in 2 weeks. So these numbers are, immobilization is not good for muscle. And even a long time after injury, so this is an ACL reconstruction, even a long time after injury, the muscle sometimes does not fully recover. And even 2 years after injury, there can be some lasting change in muscle. So how do you get athletes stronger? Generally, you have to train them, and you have to train the muscle fairly hard to make it change. It takes a long time to change. And that means a fair amount of load going through your injured tissues. And so athletes in the early stage after injury, they can't strength train, and they can't strength train to the levels that a lot of the guidance would suggest. So what do you do with them? How do you work with them in the early stage before they can strength train? So how can you get them stronger earlier with less effort? So blood flow restriction strength training is one of the components. I'm sorry about the videos, but it's one of the things that we've been exploring for the people in the early stage after injury. So it basically involves putting a cuff around an injured limb and then training the limb. But the cuff pressure is not at full occlusion pressure. It's about 80%, 50 to 80%, and the weight loads are very low. So they're easy weights to lift and push. And when those weights are used without the cuff, we tend to find that the muscle doesn't change. So if the weight's too low, the muscle won't change. But when you put the cuff on, the athlete gets changes in strength and hypertrophy as if they had heavy load trained, but even with the very low loads. So this technique has been researched with multiple applications: immobilization, with ACL reconstruction, with osteoarthritis, with knee arthroscopy, with patellofemoral pain, Achilles tendon rupture. It's been tried with functional training, and it's been used with elderly patients. So there's a video of a 104-year-old Japanese lady doing the training, katsu training, if I can bring that up. And then we're looking a little bit at applications like training while people are in their casts, so still training while they're still immobilized. So it allows strength gain at very low load in the early stage of rehab. So we wanted to look at to see whether this would work with patients in our National Health Service, so general state health patients, and we wanted to see whether this could be effective for them and whether it would be safe. So we've did a trial, a randomized controlled trial in our hospital, so a state hospital. We took 28 patients after ACL reconstruction. We split them into 2 groups, and we started them training from 2 weeks post-operatively. So very fresh post-operative, the wounds had just closed. And we had 2 groups, one with heavy load training, where they trained as much as they could manage, and the other group with very light load, but with the blood flow restriction cuff around their leg. We used a leg press, and we trained this set and rep range and this recovery phase. We trained them for 8 weeks, twice a week. and we trained the unaffected leg with the same routine. We used a blood pressure cuff which allowed us to measure occlusion. So we measured the pressure every session to make sure that we were accurate. So our outcomes, we looked at safety and strength. We looked at 2 weeks post-op as our start. We looked at 6 weeks and then 10 weeks post-operatively. So these are our outcomes, and this is the first measure, which was strength. The BFR group in green only trained at 1/3 of the load compared to the control group. But what we found was that they dropped in strength after the surgery, and then after 4 weeks, they'd almost picked up that same strength back. And after 8 weeks of training, we found that they'd exceeded their strength pre-surgery. And we found there was no significant difference between the two groups, in spite of one group training at only 1/3 of the load. This is their percentage of body weight. And for most patients, by the time they reached the 10-week mark post-operatively, they were pushing more than their body weight with a single leg press for 10 RM on a leg press. So both groups got very strong very quickly. When we looked at pain, with the within-session muscle pain, anyone who's done blood flow restriction training knows that it is a bit uncomfortable. So we found that our patients had some discomfort, but their levels of effort were the same. But when we looked at their knee pain during the session and after the session, they had a lot less knee pain. So their surgical knee, they had a lot less pain. So patients liked the BFR because it resulted in less pain and even a bit less swelling. So we found that it was effective, but I should note that this is just part of the program. The strength component of the program was just one part of a bigger treatment program that we did with these patients. We did a systematic review, and BFR may not be appropriate for all people. If an athlete can heavy load train, potentially they probably should heavy load train. This was a meta-analysis that my doctoral student Luke Hughes did with us, and it came out in favor of heavy load training. But there's more and more literature coming out all the time on blood flow restriction training, and it's been used in sport for a long time, in professional sport especially, as an effective tool, but we're looking at the use in general population. So in conclusion, muscle is important. Muscle is an incredible tissue. It has multiple roles and it has a key impact on health. Strength training with BFR is safe. So we found that it was safe for our NHS state medicine patients for this diagnosis, even in the very early stages. And we found that the strength gains were not significantly different. So these patients trained well and gained good strength, but only at 1/3 of normal load. We found that their knee pain was better. The patients liked it because they didn't get so much post-session or within-session pain. There's a growing body of research suggesting that BFR may be effective not just for ACL reconstruction, but for a lot of other multiple conditions. And it's a tool in rehabilitation. But the caveat is that there's still more research needed. It is only one part of the training program, and muscle has a lot of different other components in strength that need to be trained, not just a single exercise for rehab. Rehab needs multiple exercises. And in some patients, the heavy load training may be more appropriate. So these are our papers. We've published the randomized controlled trial in several journals. And thanks to my collaborators, my doctoral student Luke Hughes, and our other research team. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patton. For her time and for her valuable contribution to the conference, I would like to invite again the CEO of Azərbaycan National Anti-Doping Agency, dear Dr. Tahmina Tağzadeh, for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much for everyone who contributed in the first day of this conference, and I would like again express my deep appreciation to all speakers, because this 10 to 15 minutes presentation is the result of huge work which was done during the long month. So thank you very much. Just to remind you that this is the second international conference on sports science, and we hope that it will not be the only second. It will be third and fifth and maybe 10th, and we will all come together again for these conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tağzade. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the conference comes to an
dostlar,
end.
əziz izləyicilər, ASAPES rəsmi YouTube platformasından yayınladığımız elmi, ikinci beynəlxalq elmi konfransın ilk gününün sonuna gəlib çatdıq. Bütün mövzular üzrə təqdimatlar və məruzələr yekunlaşdı. Amma konfrans işini sabah da davam etdirəcək və 1 dekabr tarixində idman elminin müxtəlif sahələrini əhatə edən praktiki təqdimatlar və müzakirələr ASAPES-də davam edəcək. Canlı yayımızı yekunlaşdırırıq. Hər kəsə təşəkkür edirik. Bütün komandamıza minnətdarıq və bu yaxın saatlar ərzində canlı yayımda bizi izlədiyiniz üçün hər kəsə təşəkkürlər.